Hi, everyone. Welcome all of you once again to our series of expert interviews with established individuals in finance called Financially Speaking. This series is an attempt to simplify different aspects of finance and, in the words of individuals who have broken down the complications and have carved their own niches, making finance work for them. Today, I am absolutely honored and delighted to have with me Mr. Utkarsh Majmudar. Mr. Majmudar is a fellow of the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and a PGDM from IIM Lucknow. He has over decades of experience encompassing teaching, research, administration at premier business schools in India, including IIM Bangalore, IIM Lucknow, IIM Udaipur, etc., and working with large corporations in India at GE Capital, iGate, and HSBC. Apart from finance that he has worked on and loves teaching, he has done significant work in the area of sustainability and CSR, conducting an annual study of the performance of companies on corporate responsibility, working with large companies, publishing cases, and writing over 200 pieces on the theme. In addition to this, Mr. Majmudar is also the author of this amazing book called Balance, Responsible Business for the Digital Age. I'm going to put a picture of the book here in the talk as we go, but over to you, sir. In your own words, what has your journey been like? Tell us a little bit about you, your work, and what have you sort of experienced in these years of experience?
Okay, so I don't know where to begin, but I would actually start from my MBA degree. I finished my MBA from IIM Lucknow, and then I moved on and worked for a couple of years in a public sector TV manufacturing company in the accounts and finance department. Now, that was a pretty low down work there. But the interesting thing that happened there, and this is something which I hold on for life, is that you grab opportunities when you get them. I got an opportunity to work on a feasibility study that we were to submit to the State Industrial Board. And, this is something which I didn't know at all. I had no clue what to do, right? But I accepted it. I picked it up and did it, right? So that gave me confidence that one can pick up new things, learn from it, and grow. Right? And after that, I always had an interest in doing a PhD program. So I enrolled at IIM Ahmedabad. It was lucky that I got in there, but yeah, I did my PhD, finished my PhD, came to IIM Lucknow, started teaching there, and again, things happen. Somebody wanted me to join in and start a course. And we decided that I'll do this part, he'll do that part. And suddenly he dropped out. He left the institution, right? Now I was left holding the baby, right? So that helped me develop even more things there. So that's how I think I have grown and developed over a period of time. I'm Bangalore. Had a good experience, had good fun. Then a friend of mine called me and said, look, I'm working here with GE Capital. We are into analytics. And I said, finance and analytics seem to make a sense. And I went in, started working on analytics, something which again I'd never done. Right? Again, there was a project which wanted me to work on Excel VBA, something that people do a lot these days. But in those days, that was about 20 years back, I didn't have a clue. So I told my boss, look, I don't know how to do it. He said, don't worry, you pick it up, I'll help you if you need. And I picked it up. I built something which I think became pretty popular within the organization at that point in time. It was fun. It was something that got recognition, and that's where. So that's what to all the listeners, I think listeners or watchers, what I would say is always, if you get an opportunity, pick it up and run with it. Otherwise, what happens is that we see this is my area, this is where I want to be. And the way the world is today, you don't have a chance if things go haywire in your career, right? I thought that then I went into iGate, where we were supporting investment banks in US. Then went on to HSBC, where I worked in the area of equity research. Primarily, my role was in training, but then I got the opportunity to work with a large number of analysts, which enriched me a lot. So that's and then one fine day, this friend of mine, Namrata Rana, who I had studied with at IIM Ahmedabad, she called me up and said, "Look, I'm doing this work on CSR and sustainability. Would you like to join?" I said, "I have no clue what you're talking about," right? Then she said, "Let's do one project together and then we'll see." And I'm grateful to her. I picked up CSR and sustainability. I read a lot. It's not that I've been formally trained, but I've read a lot. I've picked it up, and yeah, and here I am.
That's wonderful. I love your thought when you say, if you get an opportunity, just grab it and run. So one core area that, I want to address, and for a lot of viewers out there who don't even know what is sustainable finance. So can you tell us from your perspective, what exactly is sustainable finance and what does it mean?
Okay, I'll probably start from the very beginning. In the sense that when societies emerged, so to speak, we had only enough to feed ourselves. So right in the beginning, we hunted and whatever meat we got, we ate, and then we were happy. That was the only thing that we did, right? And then gradually we learned how to grow crops, farming, and again we were self-sufficient, right? No problem with the world. But at the same time, what was also happening was something very interesting, that science, maths, all these streams were developing. And with the development of science, what happened was people started finding efficient ways to do things, right? The wheel had already come about. So there was some movement that people were happening, but day to day, there were lots of difficulties that people were facing. And that sort of, those difficulties, people started trying to find ways on how to simplify their life, right? As you make your life more complicated, you want to simplify it, right? So that whole thing led to, and I'm jumping lots of years, led to what is known as the Industrial Revolution. Industrial revolutions brought forth industries, right? Industries needed a lot of fuel that came from coal. In early days, it was essentially coal, and gradually as it developed, petrol was discovered, right? So you had another source of fuel. At the same time, your automobiles came about, right? So there was this whole business that started developing and growing, and right. Now remember the old days when we were happy, we were doing what we were, and we were, and even with all this industrial revolution, we were still happy. But what was happening on the side was something that we never realized. We started spoiling the earth. Up till now, we were not spoiling the earth. Now we started spoiling the earth, right? So we started burning coal that emitted fumes, that spoiled people's health. Cars were belching noxious gases, right? All sorts of things are happening, right? Petroleum also led to the development of plastics and other material. Now, all these materials tended to be materials which don't die out. easily, right? So now we have these mountains of plastic and things like that. So we made the world worse off than what it was. Now, before I get into sustainable finance, I'll talk a little bit about sustainability. Sustainability is what? Sustainability is a very simple concept. Leave the earth in exactly the same way as you got it. Right? Now, if you have to leave earth in exactly the same way as you got it, say about 500 years back, it was probably easy. Yeah, you didn't have to do too much. And now, unfortunately, we've become so used to so much of material life that it's becoming extremely difficult. Right? So one thing that we want to do really is to leave the earth in exactly the same way as we got it. But then we've messed around with the world, right? We messed around with planet Earth. We've got to clean it up, right? And that requires money, huge amounts of money. That's where finance comes in. And what's finance? I mean, in simple words, those who have lots of money, give it to those who don't have money. Right? It's essentially transfer of money, and you make some profit along the way. Now that large amount of money is required, you will have to you'll have to deploy, and you need somebody who will deploy it. So there are these providers of capital who will put in money to help us clean the earth. That to me is the basic fundamental of sustainable finance. And I know I've taken a long time in explaining this, but that's what sustainable finance really is all about.
Thank you so much, sir, for explaining it with such, patience and precision, because I don't think any better definition of what you said, using finance to leave the earth just the way we found it or the way it was 500 years ago. So that is so powerful. And I think, it sort of aligns, of course, with all our SDGs and all those things at different levels. But unless that realization comes from within, that change is really not going to happen unless people become more and more aware of what the whole concept is and why we need to bother. So that is something which is so important. And thank you so much, sir, for explaining it to us so well. So, sir, I've had a brief opportunity to work with Jean Rogers of the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. And I was wondering, are there similar standards which are relevant in India? We've heard Reliance say that they're going to become net carbon, neutral by 2035. Is there a way to sort of measure these kind of things? And what are the standards that are available in India?
Okay. India in particular does not have any such standards, unfortunately, right? But there are global standards, right? Unfortunately, what has also happened is that standards have evolved separately by different institutions, right? So you have what are known as the GRI standards, which a lot of people use, more than what you mentioned, SASB. SSB is also becoming extremely popular, but GRI has been there for a very, very long time. Right? Then you have something called CDP, the Carbon Disclosure Protocol. That's another standard. Then you have then you have the TCFD, Task Force for Carbon Disclosures. Right? I'm sorry, Task Force for Climate Disclosures. Right? So TFCD. Right? So there are these numerous, and what has also happened recently is that the CFA Institute has also come out with its own standards. There are multiplicity of standards. Right? It confuses the heck out of people who want to implement sustainability projects as to which standard to adopt. Right? There are overlaps. There are expectations from users as to what standards to adopt, or how do you evaluate it? It gets extremely complicated. Now, to my mind, there is a need for significant harmonization amongst the standards, because some standards are tighter, some are lighter, some are, so for instance, GRI is mainly focused towards environment. SASB is much more broader, right? It actually looks at the entire gamut of ESG, as it is called, um, environmental, social, and governance, right? So it covers that. Uh, Carbon disclosure protocol is again very narrow. It looks at only carbon, right? Task force for climate disclosure is wider. So all that I'm trying to say is that there are overlaps between them. There are parts which are uncommon. So what happens is, if say company A is adopting a GRI and company B is adopting SASB, I don't know how to compare the two, right? So that becomes a genuine problem. So to my mind, what is really required is to have a single set of standards. In fact, last year, if I'm not mistaken, the European Union has also come out with its own set of standards, although applicable only in the European Union, but everybody else is starting to pick on them. Right? This is a really complex area, and I think what it needs is simplification for people to understand what it is. How do you measure things? I think another big area where I think a lot of work needs to be done is, how do you measure something, right? Everyone talks about ESG. You can measure E. E part is the most straightforward. I mean, even though you will say, how do I measure how much I have emitted? But there are scientific methods to do that. Unfortunately, what you're doing on the social side or on the governance side is not measurable, or not measurable so accurately, right? I mean, for instance, take the case of industrial safety, right? Industrial safety is a big area. Uh, so if I don't have any accidents in a year, that's one metric, right? If no one in my company falls sick, that's another metric, right? If no one takes leave in my organization, that's another metric, because I'm healthy, I don't need leave, right? Now, if company X reports one metric, company Y reports another metric, how do I understand what it is, right? So it's not so straightforward, right? So even social, in the sense, some things are measurable. If I'm providing water in a particular area, I can measure how much water I provided and the good thing that I did with it. But what was the well-being of the people because of that water is something that I don't know, right? At the same time, it could be that I'm operating in an area where requirement for water is not so high. I work in another area where there are constant droughts. The value of water itself is much higher where there are droughts, right? So how do I measure, right? And how do I figure out these things? Fairly complex set of things, right?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, sir. So that sort of brings me to that point because, of course, there will be, I'm hoping, one such standard probably that India will come up with in a way to sort of understand. And a very important aspect there becomes this aspect about education about green finance. What is it? Why do we sort of need to worry about it? And although we've started talking about it, and at least tier one institutes have started discussing these things, but how do you think this sort of education can pave the way, and what is the criticality of this education about green finance, sir?
Okay, it is very important, and I'll say this because what is happening is that funding for companies is now significantly needed to make them green, right? So if I learn how companies can become green, and how do I fund them, right? So at the end of the day, if I'm a banker, if I'm a financier, I need to understand how the company is going to use the money, right? Now, the company has two choices. I take the money, use it for whatever purpose I want, and say, look, I've done good. On the other hand, the company takes the money, uses it responsibly, and does the thing that it is required to do. Right? Now, unless a financier really understands this, it becomes very difficult for the financier to sort of go ahead and fund these projects. The other area where I think there's going to be big need to understand is this whole business of what is known as transition finance. Right? I need to transition from, from what is known as the brown economy to the green economy, in the sense that I'm a power plant, I'm a coal-based power plant, I want to go into solar energy. Right? So this leads to a very unique kind of a problem, and that problem is known as stranded assets. Right? I have funded a coal-based power plants 10 years back. At that time, there was not much about climate and green and stuff like that. The company has, from its revenue, been repaying the loan, and because it has been repaying the loan, I'm happy with it. But now this company says, I want to shift to solar. Now there are 30 years of life of this project left, right? Because this 30 years of life is left, I won't be able to repay the loan because I'm not running that plant anymore, right? Now, how do I account for that? So handling stranded assets is a big part of the problem. And to people who are learning green finance or need to get that understanding, it becomes extremely important to be in that space. I hope that answers you.
That absolutely does, sir. I think, we need to start talking about it at least now, so that that change at least comes by the next generation, and just trying to accept that, because for so long we have sort of taken things as they are. We've not really bothered about, we've just been so focused on consumption that nobody really has bothered about. And all this talk about green finance and what you say about who's going to worry about the stressed assets. So that is also something that sort of comes together. So thank you so much for elucidating that. One core aspect that we've noticed, and what we are trying to hoping and aspiring, is that creating an ecosystem of different kinds of fintechs, where at the end of the day, the consumer is a conscious consumer. He's not just taking a loan just because loan free mein mil raha hai, and just because you take it, not understanding how to repay it, but something which sort of builds on this concept of stakeholder capitalism.
Right.
Now, the way I see it right now, it's not really in any investor's mind at this point in time. They're not really focused about that. But the way, like with most things, the realization comes much later. How do you think that, the growing ecosystem of fintechs in India can pave the way for stakeholder capitalism?
Okay. I mean, I honestly don't understand fintech too well, but let me sort of make an attempt at it. Right? So banks, as we know, and have been brick and mortar things. You went there, you put in money. You went there, you needed money. You took out the money. That's how we've known banks, right? And they still exist partly in that way. But how many of us visit banks anymore? We don't, right? So what has happened is banks have become data centers, right? I'm exaggerating this a little bit, but banks have actually become data centers. Now, because they have become data centers, fintech has evolved. The evolution of fintech is because banks are data centers. And because they have become the data centers, fintech gets enabled in moving money in and out of banks. Now, right now, banks don't operate, I'm sorry, the fintech doesn't operate independently of banks. It needs something at the back end, which is actually the bank. Right? Now imagine all this green financing, which is being done by banks. Can I use technology to make the lending decisions for green finance? So let's take an example. Somebody needs to set up a solar power plant. Right? Now, when some of these fintech companies give loan to people, it's pretty simple. They ask for 3-4 documents. Those documents are automatically scanned. You check whether the guy is worthy of giving a loan, and you give a loan. Can we do something like that in green finance? Can we take the inputs and make a decision whether the guy is a genuine green, is genuinely a green guy in that sense? Right? So technology can help you speed up those decisions. Right? To my mind, at the end of the day, you still need a final human decision at some level, because the amounts involved will be far larger than what a personal loan would be, personal loan, car loan, or whatever loan. So that is going to be much larger. So there is going to be, but my sense is that if you are going to have backup of technology, a lot of this funding can become far more easier, at least at small enterprise level, or maybe even at a medium enterprise level. At large enterprise level, I know it's very difficult, right? But I think that day will also come. It's not that it's not coming, but it's just an enabler. And I really see fintech as just an enabler, right? You're not doing anything new. You're just trying to do things which make life easy for the bank, for the customer, and make some money on the side.
Yeah, yes, sir. That is so true. I think that is the power of technology again, because it has this reach. And of course, dispensing would become so much, even with the latest grant that the government of India has launched. And they're saying it's going to be all, through technology and automated transfers. So, and I feel that India is sort of poised to sort of grow in the next decade or so. And it's a personal belief I have, and put a lot of trust in the country, because I think the capability is all here, and now funding is also coming in. So with that, sir, we absolutely admire your work with your publications and book, which are all available on your website, utkarshmajmudar.com. But if there was one book or one individual who has continued to inspire you in your personal finance journey, who would that be, sir?
That's a tough question. I'll sort of look at it on at two levels, if I may answer that question. And I won't say just one book. Academically, I think anybody who's learning finance, the book on corporate finance by Braley and Myers is an absolute must. Right? It's virtually the Bible of finance. And that's where I started learning finance, right? And that's what gave me the love for finance. Right? So that's one book. I think literally everyone who's interested in finance has to start reading, because that lays a solid foundation in you. In terms of books outside the academic circle, one book which I really loved has been this book called Against the Gods by Peter Bernstein. It talks about risk, right, and how risk has evolved, and it's a very fascinating story about risk. And I would encourage people to read this book. Right, your love for finance is going to simply grow. with that book. Of course, there are tons of books that I've read, but I would essentially recommend this book. And if somebody is interested in something like mergers and acquisitions, I think Barbarians at the Gate is an ultimate story that people should read. It just tells you in a novel kind of a form. It's a fictionalized version of KKR's acquisition of RJ Nabisco. But the story behind that is absolutely fascinating. And I think that's what people can read. Just a couple of books that I've loved in my life.
Thank you. I'm going to pick up Against the Gods, definitely, because I feel that one of the core areas of financial literacy is risk and risk management and risk diversification. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time, sir, and for sharing your wonderful thoughts with us. I couldn't be more indebted to you. So thank you once again for your time and valuable, insights into the world of sustainable finance and more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.